Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's Word Study. Today we're going to cover two Otiot studies. One, we're going to look at, what it means to fear Yahweh. The word always says, fear Yahweh. And a lot of people have the same reaction to that. Fear him? Is he a monster? Is he gonna kill us? So we're going to look at that. And also we're going to look at the original Aramaic with an Otiot study for hosts. Yahwah of Hosts. What does that mean? Hosts. There's a bunch of hosts? This is why we do the Otiot. These English terms are strange. So anyway, we're going to start off with what does it mean to fear Yahweh? The word we see as fear, or, afraid in English, comes from the original Aramaic Hebrew word yareh, and that is Strong's number H3372. Strong's says that it means to fear or to revere. That one's good. It also says to cause to frighten, to be or to make afraid, dread, dreadful, fearful, terrible. And, when they give all these different definitions, like in Strong's or Vine's or whatever, they're looking at all these different places in the word where something like yareh would come up. And then they look at all these different situations and they try and put it all together and they give you all these different definitions. But if you, when we do these Otiot studies, there's no need for all those variations. But this is what happens when the Western mindset, which focuses on form, tries to interpret Eastern concepts which focus on function. Of all that Strong's has to say, revere is the best, for sure. We should always have reverence for Abba, Father. But, who would ever fear a father whose love for them is so great? For example, my dad and I were extremely close and loved each other beyond measure. And I certainly revered him. I honored him. And I respected him. Because he was such a good man. And his love for me it's just amazing, And he was such a good father. When he gave me instruction, I treasured it. I mean, even to this day, there are things that he gave me instruction on that they have stayed with me for decades. An example, one day he said to me, he said, "Son, just don't ever do anything you wouldn't be proud to tell me about." And, I thought about that. And certainly there were times where I did things I wasn't proud to tell him about and things I didn't tell him about. But every time I did those things, I remembered his words. Why? Because I revered him. Now, I never feared him or had any reason to fear him because I knew beyond the shadow of any doubt he would never do anything to harm me. And this is true also with our Father, Abba Yahweh. He would never do anything to harm us. He loves us. Now, there's one aspect of fear that I would share, and that is that I certainly feared doing anything that would ever displease my daddy. I would never want to do anything to displease him or to make him ashamed of me. That was something that I feared doing, you might say. I don't even know if fear fits there, but it's certainly something that, with a passion, I would never want to do anything to displease Abba Father. I want to put him first. I want to please him. I want him to recognize the fact that I love him and I treasure him. I revere him. So there's no reason to fear Yahuwah, but we should certainly fear doing anything that would disappoint him. And one other point I would make is this. To anyone who is not making Elohim number one on a list of one in their lives, to anyone who is in love with the things of this world more than the things of Elohim, they should fear Yahuwah, not Satan. A lot of people are afraid of the devil. Oh, this evil, it's scary, The movies, that they make are full of fear for evil. Should never fear Satan, but rather Yahuwah. Satan's been defeated in the day of Yahuwah. Now I'm talking about people who they don't love Yahuwah and they don't have Yeshua as their Adon, their master. When the 7-year tribulation comes and the day of the wrath of Yahuwah and the day of the wrath of the Lamb, that is something truly to be feared by those who do not love him. Now, all that being said, let's take a look at the Otiot. Yareh is spelled Yod, Resh, Aleph. Yod, picture of an arm and a hand. Has to do with work, what we make. Has to do with actions, what we do. It has to do with worshiping. Then we have Resh, picture of a man's head. It has to do with who your headship is and what your thoughts are on. Then we have Aleph, picture of an ox's head. It has to do with being yoked to Abba Father, and it has to do with being taught by Abba Father. Now in Genesis chapter 20, verse 8, we read, Abimelech told his servants how Elohim stopped him from committing a grave sin. And the men were Yareh. Most English Bibles will say that they were afraid. But the truth is that they were filled with reverence for Elohim. They were concerned about being sure that their work and actions fully took into account their relationship with Elohim. They weren't just, Abimelech tells him this story about how Yahweh kept him from committing a grave sin. And, then you read that they were afraid. What does that mean? They were Yareh. They were filled with reverence for Elohim and concerned about their own walk with him. So, wherever you see scriptures that say, fear Yahweh, it truly means that you are to revere him, that you are to be sure that your work and your actions make a full display of your reverence for him, that your worship is of him and him alone, and that instead of thinking about yourself or someone else, you are thinking about Elohim. Elohim is a term that refers to the Father, his Son, and his Ruach HaKodesh, his Kodesh Spirit. So, like I said, instead of thinking about yourself or someone else in any kind of a situation, you should be thinking about Elohim at all times. Now, let's look at this other one I've been asked quite a bit about, and that is Yahwah of Hosts. We see Yahwah of Hosts in the Word. The HalleluYah Scriptures says Yahwah of Hosts. Even the Amplified Bible says Yahweh of Hosts. But the NIV says not hosts, but Almighty. And I like that one much better. You know, a lot of people like to put the NIV down. That's the New International Version. And for years, I always said the NIV gives one of the best English interpretations of what the original Aramaic Hebrew says. And that was my favorite version until the HalleluYah Scriptures came around. And if you don't have HalleluYah Scriptures, check out underneath this video in the More Info section. There's a link seen beneath any one of my videos that will take you over to HalleluYahScriptures.com. Now, you know, that's all English. However, Elohim wrote Tsabah. Yahweh Tsabah. Now, Tsabah is Strong's H6635, and it's been interpreted into English as, according to their armies, Exodus 6:26, against them in battle, Joshua 22:33. This is just one word, Tsabah. All her host, Jeremiah 51:3, all the host, Deuteronomy 4:19, an army, 2 Chronicles 26:13, war, Job 10:17, the time appointed, Daniel 10:1. And the list goes on and on and on. But those are all strange. Sabah is spelled Tzad, or you could say Tzadi, Beit, Aleph. Tzad, picture of a path, the way. It has to do with hunting or chasing and with righteousness. Tzaddik, that's the word for the righteous one. Then we have Beit, picture of a house. Has to do with family. Has to do with Yeshua. And then Aleph, picture of the ox head. Once again, it has to do with being yoked to Abba, Father, Yahweh. And it has to do with being taught by Abba, Father, Yahweh. And it speaks of Yahuwah. So, Yahweh of Hosts, or Yahweh Almighty, Yahweh Tsabah talks about Yahweh, who is the head of the house. What house? The house of his family, of his children, those who are yoked to him and taught by him, those who walk the narrow path, the way, with Yeshua as their Adon, as their master. And that's our study for this week, my friends. As always, I hope and I pray that this study and all my videos are a major beracha to you and to yours. And, Abba willing, I'll see you here next week. Until then, shalom, my friends. Yeah. Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day. Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remains.